The morning sun cast long shadows across New Terra Colony as Officer Blake Morrison walked through the residential district. His heavy boots echoed on the metal walkways that connected the housing units. Blake wore the dark blue uniform of Colony Security, but the badge on his chest meant nothing to him. Power was what mattered, and he had plenty of it. New Terra was humanity's first home among the stars. The colony sat on a planet 300 light-years from Earth. People from all over the old world had come here to start fresh. They built new lives under alien skies, hoping for peace and equality. But some things never changed, no matter how far humans traveled. Blake stopped outside Housing Unit 47C. He had been watching this building for weeks. Young families lived here, mostly new arrivals who didn't know the rules yet. They were easy targets. Blake smiled as he pressed the door chime. Katie Williams answered the door. She was 16 years old with blonde hair tied back in a simple ponytail. Her clothes were clean but worn, the kind that families bought when money was tight. Katie's parents worked double shifts in the mining operations to pay for their small apartment. "Security inspection," Blake said, pushing past Katie. Into the apartment. He didn't wait for permission, he never did. "But sir, we had an inspection last month," Katie said. Her voice was small and nervous. "My parents aren't home right now." "That's fine, girl, this won't take long." Blake's eyes moved around the small living space. The apartment was neat and simple. A few family photos sat on a table. Children's drawings hung on the wall. Nothing valuable or illegal anywhere. Blake walked to the kitchen area and opened cabinets at random. He wasn't looking for anything specific. This was about control, about showing people who was in charge. Katie stood near the door, her hands clasped in front of her. "Where do your parents work?" Blake asked. "The lithium mines, sir. Sector 7. Blake nodded. Sector 7 was the deepest part of the mining operation. Dangerous work that kept people busy for 12 hours at a time. Perfect for his purposes. "And what about you? What do you do all day while they're gone?" "I study at home, sir. I'm preparing for the academy entrance exam." Blake turned away from the cabinets and looked at Katie closely. The academy was for smart kids who wanted to join the colony's defense forces. Katie was exactly the type he enjoyed breaking down. "The academy, huh? Think you're better than the rest of us?" "No, sir, I just want to help protect the colony." Blake laughed. It was not a pleasant sound. "Protect the colony. Little girls like you don't protect anything. You need men like me to keep you safe." Outside the apartment, other colonists went about their daily business. The residential district was always busy during the day. People walked to work, children played in the common areas, and vendors sold food from small carts. It was a normal morning on New Terra, but inside apartment 47C something terrible was about to happen. Blake moved closer to Katie. She took a step back until she was pressed against the wall. Her breathing became quick and shallow. "You know, what, girl? I think you might be hiding something under those clothes. Contraband, maybe, illegal tech devices." "I'm not hiding anything, sir. Please, you can search the apartment." "Oh, I plan to search everything." Blake's hand moved toward Katie's waist. "Turn around and put your hands on the wall." Katie's eyes filled with tears. She knew this was wrong, but Blake wore the uniform. He had the authority. She had been taught to obey colony security. Slowly, Katie turned to face the wall. Blake stepped behind her, and without warning, he grabbed the hem of her skirt and lifted it up. Katie cried out in shock and shame. "Please stop, I haven't done anything wrong." "Shut up and stay still," Blake growled. He kept her skirt raised while he pretended to look for hidden items. Other colonists were walking past the open apartment door. Some saw what was happening. They stopped and stared, but no one spoke up. Blake was security. Who would believe them against him? Katie sobbed quietly as Blake continued his fake search. He enjoyed her fear and humiliation. This was why he had become a security officer. Not to protect people, but to have power over them. Then a new voice cut through the air like a blade. "Officer Morrison, step away from that girl immediately." Blake spun around. In the doorway stood Commander Zara Jackson. She was tall and strong, with dark skin and eyes that burned with anger. Her uniform was crisp and clean, with the gold stars of a colony defense commander on her collar. Unlike Blake, she had earned every bit of respect that came with her rank. "Commander Jackson," Blake said, dropping Katie's skirt. "I was just conducting a routine security search." "By sexually assaulting a minor?" Zara's voice was ice cold. "In front of witnesses?" Katie pulled her skirt down and ran to the far corner of the room. She was shaking and crying. The colonists outside had gathered to watch. Word was already spreading through the district. "Now hold on," Blake said. "You don't understand the situation here. This girl was acting suspicious. I had probable cause to search her. The only thing suspicious here is your behavior." Zara stepped into the apartment. She was not as big as Blake, but her presence filled the room. "Katie, are you hurt?" "I'm okay," Katie whispered. But she wasn't okay. None of this was okay. Zara looked at the gathered crowd outside. She saw fear in their faces, fear of Blake, fear of speaking up, fear of what might happen to them if they got involved. This was exactly the kind of corruption that could destroy everything humanity had built on New Terra. "Officer Morrison, you're suspended pending investigation. Report to headquarters immediately." Blake's face turned red with anger. "You can't suspend me. Captain Fletcher won't stand for this. He knows I was just doing my job. Your job is to protect colonists, not terrorize them." Zara moved to stand between Blake and Katie. "Leave now, before I place you under arrest." Blake wanted to argue more, but something in Zara's eyes told him to stop. She was not afraid of him or his connections. She was not someone he could intimidate. "This isn't over," Blake muttered as he walked toward the door. "You're right," Zara said quietly. "It's just beginning." Blake pushed through the crowd and disappeared down the walkway. The colonists slowly returned to their business, but they would remember what they had seen. Word would spread quickly through New Terra Colony. Zara knelt down next to Katie. "You're safe now. He can't hurt you anymore." But even as she spoke those words, Zara knew the real fight was just starting. Blake Morrison represented everything wrong with the old ways of thinking. And now, with alien observers watching humanity's every move, the stakes had never been higher. Blake Morrison stormed into the security headquarters building. His face was red with anger and sweat dripped from his forehead. The automatic doors slid shut behind him with a soft hiss. Other security officers looked up from their desks, but quickly looked away. They could see the rage in Blake's eyes. The headquarters was a large gray building in the center of New Terra Colony. Inside, rows of desks filled the main floor. Security monitors showed feeds from cameras all over the colony. Officers in dark blue uniforms sat at computers, filing reports and watching for trouble. But most of them were lazy and corrupt, just like Blake. Blake walked straight to Captain Roy Fletcher's office. Roy was his friend and protector. They had worked together for 5 years, and Roy had covered for Blake many times before. The captain's office had thick walls and a heavy door, perfect for private conversations. "Roy, we have a problem," Blake said as he burst through the door. Captain Fletcher looked up from his computer screen. He was a heavy man with gray hair and small dark eyes. His uniform was too tight around his belly. Empty food containers covered his desk along with stacks of unread reports. "What happened now, Blake?" "That Jackson woman interfered with my security operation. She made me look like a fool in front of half the colony." Roy leaned back in his chair. It creaked under his weight. "Tell me exactly what happened." Blake told his version of the story. He said Katie Williams was acting suspicious near the transport depot. He claimed she might have been smuggling illegal technology. He said he was just doing a proper security search when Commander Jackson arrived and made false accusations. "The girl was probably hiding contraband in her clothes," Blake finished. "Jackson stopped me before I could find the evidence." Roy nodded slowly. He had heard Blake's lies many times before, but Blake was useful. He did the dirty work that Roy didn't want to handle himself. And Blake never asked questions about Roy's own illegal activities. "Don't worry," Roy said. "I'll handle this. Jackson thinks she's better than us, but she doesn't understand how things really work around here. While Blake and Roy plotted in the security building, Commander Zara Jackson was across town at the Colony Administration Center. This building was newer and cleaner than security headquarters. The walls were white, and bright lights hung from the ceiling. Real plants grew in pots near the windows. Zara sat in a small conference room with Katie Williams and her parents. Katie's mother, Linda, held her daughter's hand. Katie's father, Bob, paced back and forth near the window. His face was hard with anger. "I want that man arrested," Bob said. "What he did to my daughter was completely wrong." "I understand your feelings," Zara replied, "and I promise you that Officer Morrison will face consequences for his actions. But we need to be careful about how we proceed." Linda looked confused. "What do you mean careful? Everyone saw what happened." Zara sighed. She knew the colony security department was full of corrupt officers. Captain Fletcher would protect Blake at all costs. And the colony's justice system was slow and often unfair. Captain Fletcher will try to protect Morrison. He might claim that Katie was actually breaking the law. They could say Morrison was just doing his job. Katie spoke up for the first time since they had arrived. "But I wasn't doing anything wrong. I was just at home studying. I know that, Katie, and I believe you. But we need solid evidence to make sure Morrison can't escape justice." Bob stopped pacing and looked at Zara. "What kind of evidence?" "Witness statements, security camera footage, documentation of Morrison's past behavior. We need to build a case so strong that even Fletcher can't ignore it." Zara didn't tell them about the other pressure she was facing. 3 days ago, a ship had arrived from the Galactic Hegemony. The Hegemony was a group of advanced alien species that controlled most of the known galaxy. They had sent observers to New Terra Colony to decide if humans were ready to join their organization. The alien observers were watching everything that happened on New Terra. They wanted to see how humans treated each other. They wanted to know if humanity had grown beyond the hatred and violence that had nearly destroyed Earth. If the aliens saw corruption and injustice on New Terra, they might decide that humans were not ready for galactic citizenship. That would mean isolation and abandonment. No trade, no technology sharing, no protection from hostile alien forces. The future of humanity might depend on how well Zara handled the Morrison case. After the Williams family left, Zara went to her own office in the defense complex. The building was strong and practical, built to withstand attacks from space or ground forces. Her office was small and simple: a desk, 2 chairs, and a wall covered with maps and duty rosters. Zara activated her secure computer terminal and began searching. Through security records, she looked for other complaints against Blake Morrison. She found more than she expected. Over the past 2 years, 7 different colonists had filed complaints against Blake. Most were harassment cases. A few involved theft of personal property. One involved threats of violence against a family from Asia. All 7 complaints had been dismissed by Captain Fletcher. The official reports claimed there was not enough evidence, but Zara could see the pattern. Blake targeted people who were different from him. People who looked different, spoke different languages, or came from different cultures. Blake was not just a corrupt cop. He was a racist who used his badge to hurt people he didn't like. Zara printed out all the complaint files and put them in a secure folder. Then she sent a coded message to 3 other defense officers she trusted. She asked them to meet her that evening at a safe location. Meanwhile, back at security headquarters, Captain Fletcher was making phone calls. He spoke to the Colony Administrator's office, the Justice Department, and the Transportation Authority. He told them all the same story. Katie Williams was a suspected smuggler. Blake Morrison was a dedicated officer just doing his job. Commander Jackson had interfered with a legitimate investigation. Fletcher also sent official reports to the colony's central database. The reports claimed that Katie had been caught with illegal technology devices. They said she had resisted proper security procedures. They painted Blake as a hero, and Jackson as someone who protected criminals. By the end of the day, Fletcher had created an official version of events that was completely false. But it was in the system now. It would be hard to remove. That evening, Zara met with her 3 trusted officers in a small restaurant on the edge of town. The place was quiet and dark, with only a few customers. They sat in a corner booth where no one could overhear them. "We have a serious problem," Zara told them. "Morrison sexually assaulted a 16-year-old girl, and Fletcher is covering it up." The three officers listened as Zara explained what had happened. Their names were Lisa, Park, Carlos Rivera, and Danny Wright. All three were honest cops who had joined the defense force to protect people, not hurt them. "What do you need us to do?" Lisa asked. "Help me gather evidence, talk to witnesses, find other victims. We're going to bring Morrison down, but we have to do it right." Carlos nodded. "Fletcher has a lot of power, but he's not untouchable." "There's something else," Zara said. "The hegemony observers are watching us. How we handle this case could determine humanity's future in the galaxy." The four officers looked at each other. They understood the stakes now. This was bigger than one corrupt cop. This was about proving that humanity deserved to be part of something greater. As they made their plans, none of them knew that Blake Morrison was already planning his next move, and his next target would be Katie Williams herself. 3 days after the incident at apartment 47C, Zara Jackson sat in her office studying security camera footage. The screen showed the residential district from different angles. She had been watching the same recordings for hours, looking for any detail that might help Katie's case. The cameras showed Blake Morrison entering the building that morning. They showed him walking to Katie's door, but the cameras inside the apartments had been turned off weeks ago. Captain Fletcher claimed it was to save money, but Zara suspected the real reason was to hide corruption. Still, the outside cameras told an important story. They showed Blake staying inside Katie's apartment for 23 minutes. They showed other colonists gathering outside when they heard Katie crying, and they clearly showed Zara arriving to stop Blake's assault. Zara saved the footage to a secure drive and locked it in her desk. This was solid evidence that would be hard for Fletcher to destroy. A soft knock came at her office door. "Come in," Zara called. Lisa Park entered with a folder in her hands. Lisa was a young officer with short black hair and serious eyes. She had grown up on New Terra and knew every family in the colony. "I found something important," Lisa said. She sat down across from Zara's desk and opened the folder. "I talked to Maria Santos yesterday. She lives in Sector 5 with her 2 children. Zara remembered Maria. She worked in the colony's food processing center and kept to herself. Maria had come to New Terra 3 years ago after her husband died. In an accident on Earth. What did Maria tell you?" 6 months ago, Blake Morrison came to her apartment. He said he was investigating reports of illegal gambling. Maria doesn't gamble, but Blake searched her home anyway. He made her remove her shirt while he looked for hidden money. Zara felt anger growing in her chest. "Did she report it?" "She tried to, but Captain Fletcher said there was no evidence. He told Maria that making false accusations against security officers was a serious crime. She got scared and dropped the complaint." Lisa pulled out more papers from the folder. "I also talked to Kevin Chang. He runs the electronics repair shop on Main Street. Last year, Blake accused him of selling stolen parts. Blake made Kevin strip, down to his underwear in front of other customers. Kevin was so embarrassed that he closed his shop for a week. Let me guess. Fletcher dismissed that complaint too. Kevin never even filed one. He was afraid Blake would arrest him for something else." Zara took the papers and read through them carefully. The pattern was becoming clear. Blake targeted people who were different from him, people who wouldn't be believed if they complained, people who were afraid to fight back. "Good work, Lisa. Keep looking for more victims. But be careful. If Fletcher finds out what we're doing, he might try to stop us." After Lisa left, Zara walked to the window of her office. Outside, she could see the colony's main street. People walked back and forth, going about their daily business. Children played in the small park near the fountain. Everything looked normal and peaceful. But Zara knew that fear lived under the surface. People were afraid to speak up against corruption. They were afraid to report crimes committed by those in power. That fear was like a poison that could destroy everything good about New Terra Colony. Her computer beeped with an incoming message. It was from Danny Wright, another one of her trusted officers. The message was short but important. "Found the weapons. Meet me at storage unit 12B at 1800 hours." Zara checked her watch. It was almost 6 in the evening. She grabbed her sidearm and headed for the door. Storage Unit 12B was in the industrial section of the colony. Large warehouses lined the streets filled with mining equipment and construction supplies. The area was usually busy during the day, but it was quiet now as the work shifts ended. Danny Wright was waiting for her outside the storage unit. He was a tall man with brown hair and steady hands. Before joining Colony Security, he had been a police detective on Earth. He knew how to investigate crimes the right way. "How did you find this place?" Zara asked. "I've been following Blake's financial records. He's been paying rent on this storage unit for 8 months, but he never reported it to the security department. That made me curious." Danny pulled out a small device and pointed it at the lock. The scanner beeped green, and the lock clicked. Open. Inside the storage unit, metal shelves lined the walls. And on those shelves were weapons that Zara had never seen before. The guns were sleek and black, with strange symbols etched into their sides. They hummed with energy even when they were turned off. These were not human weapons, they were alien technology, and they were highly illegal. "Blake has been smuggling weapons from the Krex Syndicate," Danny said. The Krex were a hostile alien race that had been at war with the hegemony for decades. Any human caught trading with them faced life in prison or worse. Zara counted 27 weapons in total. Each one was worth more money than most colonists made in a year. Blake had built up quite a collection. "This explains why he's been harassing colonists," Zara said. "Anyone who might discover his weapon smuggling operation became a target. He used fear and intimidation to keep people quiet." "And Captain Fletcher has been protecting him," Danny added. "Fletcher probably gets a cut of the profits." They took pictures of everything and recorded the weapon serial numbers. This evidence would be enough to destroy Blake's career and send him to prison for a long time. But they had to be careful about how they used it. As they prepared to leave the storage unit, Zara heard footsteps outside. She motioned for Danny to be quiet and drew her weapon. Slowly, she moved to the doorway and looked out. 3 figures in dark clothes were walking toward the storage unit. They moved like trained soldiers, checking corners and watching for threats. In the dim light, Zara could see that 2 of them were human. The third was definitely alien. "Krex," Danny whispered behind her. The Krex alien was tall and thin, with gray skin and large black eyes. Its arms were longer than a human's arms, and its fingers ended in sharp claws. It wore body armor and carried one of the illegal weapons. They had just discovered Zara and Danny were trapped. If they tried to leave through the front door, the smugglers would see them. If they stayed hidden, they might be discovered anyway. And if the Krex alien found them, they would probably be killed. The 3 figures stopped just outside the storage unit. One of the humans spoke in a low voice. "Blake said the weapons would be here. I don't see his vehicle." "Maybe he's running late," the other human replied. The Krex alien made a series of clicking sounds. Zara didn't understand the language, but the tone was impatient and angry. "It says we should take the weapons and leave," the first human translated. "It doesn't trust Blake anymore. Blake owes us money for the last shipment. We're not leaving without payment." More clicking sounds from the Krex, louder this time. "Fine. We'll wait 10 more minutes. But if Blake doesn't show up, we take everything and find a new partner." Zara looked at Danny and pointed toward the back of the storage unit. There was a small window high up on the rear wall. It was their only way out. Quietly, they moved deeper into the storage unit. Danny climbed onto a shelf and pushed the window open. It was barely big enough for a person to fit through, but it would have to do. Danny went first, pulling himself through the narrow opening. Then he reached back to help Zara. As she climbed toward the window, her foot knocked against a big metal box on the shelf. The box fell to the floor with a loud crash. Outside, the smugglers heard the noise. Footsteps ran toward the storage unit entrance. The Krex alien shouted something in its clicking language. Zara squeezed through the window just as the smugglers entered the storage unit. She and Danny dropped to the ground behind the building and ran toward their vehicle. Behind them, angry voices shouted in the darkness. They had been discovered, but they had escaped with the evidence they needed. As they drove back toward the colony center, Zara thought about everything they had learned. Blake Morrison was not just a corrupt cop who harassed innocent people. He was a traitor who was selling weapons to humanity's enemies. The stakes had just gotten much higher. And somewhere in the colony, Blake was planning his next move. Blake Morrison knew he was in trouble. The storage unit had been discovered and his alien weapons were gone. His Krex partners were angry and demanding answers. Captain Fletcher was getting nervous about the investigation. And worst of all, Commander, Jackson was getting closer to the truth every day. Blake sat in his small apartment drinking cheap alcohol and making plans. His apartment was dirty and messy, with empty food containers scattered on the floor. The walls were covered with pictures of Earth cities and old military vehicles. Blake spent most of his free time here, alone with his anger and hatred. He picked up his communication device and called Captain Fletcher. "Roy, we need to talk right now." "Not over the comm system," Fletcher replied quickly. "Meet me at the usual place in 1 hour." The usual place was an abandoned warehouse on the edge of the colony. Fletcher used it for meetings he didn't want. Recorded. Blake grabbed his security gear and headed out into the night. The warehouse was dark and cold. Broken windows let in the alien moonlight from New Terra's 3 moons. Fletcher was already waiting when Blake arrived. The captain looked worried and scared. "This is getting out of control," Fletcher said. "Jackson has been asking questions about your weapon permits. She requested your duty records for the past year. And now I hear she's been talking to colonists about filing new complaints against you." Blake felt rage building in his chest. "That woman is destroying everything we've built here. She doesn't understand how the colony really works." "Maybe we should cut our losses," Fletcher suggested. "Take what money we have and leave New Terra. There are other colonies that need security. Officers." "No!" Blake shouted. His voice echoed through the empty warehouse. "I'm not running away from some self-righteous commander who thinks she's better than us. It's time to teach Jackson and her friends a lesson they won't forget." Fletcher stepped back. He had seen Blake angry before, but this was different. This was dangerous. "What are you planning, Blake?" "The Williams girl started all this trouble. If something happened to her, Jackson would have no case, no victim, no crime. You can't be serious. Hurting a child would bring the whole colony down on us." Blake pulled out his sidearm and checked the power cell. "Not if we make it look like an accident. Or better yet, make it look like she was killed by alien smugglers. Everyone knows the Krex are dangerous." Fletcher realized that Blake had completely lost his mind. The corruption and power had twisted him into something evil. "I'm not going to be part of hurting an innocent girl." "Then you're as weak as the rest of them," Blake snarled. He pointed his weapon at Fletcher. "You're either with me or against me, Roy. Choose now." Fletcher raised his hands slowly. "Okay, Blake. Calm down. What do you need me to do?" "Create a distraction. Draw Jackson and her team away from the residential district. I'll handle the Williams girl myself." Across town, Zara Jackson was working late in her office. She had spread all the evidence across her desk like pieces of a puzzle. Witness statements, camera footage, financial records, and photos of the illegal weapons. Everything pointed to Blake Morrison as a corrupt traitor who had been abusing his power for years. But she still needed more evidence to make sure he couldn't escape justice. The colony's legal system was slow, and corrupt officials often found ways to avoid punishment. Zara wanted to build a case so strong that even the most corrupt judge couldn't ignore it. Her communication device buzzed with an urgent message. It was from the colony's emergency center. "Commander Jackson, we have reports of explosions in the industrial sector. Multiple buildings are on fire. We need all available defense personnel to respond immediately." Zara grabbed her gear and headed for the door. As she ran toward her vehicle, she called Lisa Park and Danny Wright on the radio. "All units respond to industrial sector. Possible terrorist attack or industrial accident. Meet at staging area 7. The ride to the industrial sector took 15 minutes. When Zara arrived, she could see large fires burning in 3 different warehouses. Colony firefighters were already working to control the flames. Other defense officers were evacuating nearby buildings. Lisa Park ran up to Zara's vehicle. "It looks like the fires started at the same time," she reported. 3 separate locations, all about 2 kilometers apart. This wasn't an accident. Any casualties? Not that we know of. The warehouses were empty because of the night shift schedules. Zara studied the burning buildings. Something felt wrong about the whole situation. The fires were too convenient, too perfectly timed, and they were pulling all the colony's defense forces away from the residential areas. Lisa, take half the team and continue with the fire response. I'm going back to check on the Williams family. Commander, we might need everyone here if this is a terrorist attack. Trust me on this. Something doesn't feel right. Zara jumped back into her vehicle and raced toward the residential district. As she drove, she tried to contact Katie Williams. On her communication device, there was no answer. She called Katie's parents at their work location in the mines. Linda Williams answered on the second try. Mrs. Williams, this is Commander Jackson. Is Katie safe at home? Yes, she should be sleeping now. We don't get home until morning. Why? Is something wrong? I'm not sure. I'm going to check on her just to be safe. Zara arrived at apartment 47C at the same time as Blake Morrison. She saw him standing outside Katie's door with his weapon drawn. Through the window, she could see Katie inside, terrified and trying to hide behind the furniture. Morrison, step away from that door. Blake spun around to face Zara. His face was twisted with rage and desperation. You should have minded your own business, Jackson. Now look what you've caused. The only thing I've caused is justice. You're finished, Blake. We found your weapons cache. We know about your deals with the Krecks. It's over. It's not over until I say it's over. Blake kicked in Katie's door and grabbed the terrified girl. He pressed his weapon against her head and used her as a human shield. Katie was crying and shaking with fear. She looked at Zara with desperate eyes, begging for help. Let her go, Blake. Your fight is with me, not with an innocent child. Innocent? Blake laughed. It was a cold, ugly sound. This little girl destroyed my life. If she had just kept her mouth shut, none of this would have happened. Other colonists were starting to come out of their apartments. They could hear the shouting and wanted to see what was happening. Some of them recognized Blake from his previous harassment visits. Others knew Katie from around the neighborhood. Blake, look around you, Zara said. These are the people you swore to protect. This is what a real community looks like. People who care about each other. People who protect the innocent instead of hurting them. Shut up. Blake pressed the weapon harder against Katie's head. I'm taking her to the transport depot. You're going to give me a ship and safe passage off this colony. If you try to stop me, the girl dies. Blake started walking toward his security vehicle, dragging Katie with him. Zara followed at a safe distance, her own weapon ready but unable to get a clear shot without risking Katie's life. As they reached the vehicle, Blake made a mistake. He turned his back on the crowd of colonists to open the driver's door. In that moment, Maria Santos stepped forward from the crowd. You hurt my family too, Maria said quietly. But you won't hurt any more children. Maria threw a metal tool from her work kit. It hit Blake in the shoulder and made him stumble. His grip on Katie loosened for just a moment. That was all Zara needed. She moved fast and precise, grabbing Katie and pulling her away from Blake while knocking his weapon to the ground. Blake found himself surrounded by angry colonists. People he had terrorized and abused for years. People who had finally found the courage to stand up to him. You're under arrest, Blake Morrison, Zara said as she put restraints on his wrists, for assault, harassment, weapons smuggling, and treason against the human colony. As Blake was led away, the colonists cheered. For the first time in years, they felt safe in their own homes. Justice had finally come to New Terra Colony. The trial of Blake Morrison began 3 weeks after his arrest. The colony's main courtroom was packed with people who had come to see justice served. Colonists from every district filled the seats. Some were victims who had never spoken up before. Others were ordinary citizens who wanted to witness this historic moment. At the front of the courtroom sat 3 judges. Judge Helen Carter was a fair woman who had come to New Terra to escape the corruption of Earth's legal system. Judge Alan Torres was a former military officer who believed in honor and duty. The third judge was not human at all. Ambassador Vexhai of the Galactic Hegemony sat between the 2 human judges. The alien observer was tall and graceful, with silver skin that seemed to glow in the courtroom lights. 4 arms extended from its slender body, and its large eyes missed nothing. The hegemony had requested to participate in the trial to see how humans handled justice. Blake Morrison sat at the defendant's table with his lawyer, a nervous man named Pete Johnson. Blake wore the gray uniform of a prisoner. His hands were cuffed and his face showed no emotion. He stared straight ahead, refusing to look at the people he had hurt. Captain Roy Fletcher sat in the front row, also wearing prisoner clothes. He had been arrested the day after Blake's capture. All of his corrupt activities had been exposed when investigators searched his office and home. Fletcher looked old and defeated. His career was over and he knew it. Zara Jackson sat at the prosecutor's table wearing her dress uniform. The gold stars on her collar caught the light as she organized her papers. She had spent weeks preparing for this trial. Every piece of evidence was carefully arranged. Every witness had been interviewed multiple times. "The court will come to order," Judge Carter announced. "We are here to hear the case against Blake Morrison, charged with assault, harassment, weapons smuggling, and treason against the human colony." Zara stood up to present her opening statement. The courtroom became completely quiet. "Your Honors, members of the colony, distinguished alien observer," she began. "This trial is about more than one corrupt officer. It is about what kind of society we want to be. Do we protect those who abuse their power, or do we stand with the innocent people they hurt?" She walked toward the center of the courtroom so everyone could see her clearly. "The evidence will show that Blake Morrison used his position as a security officer to terrorize the people he was supposed to protect. He targeted individuals because of their race, their culture, and their inability to fight back. He sexually assaulted a 16-year-old girl in her own home, and he betrayed all of humanity by selling weapons to our enemies." Zara turned to look directly at Blake Morrison. "The defendant will claim he was just doing his job, but harassment is not police work. Assault is not security, and treason is not patriotism." Blake's lawyer stood up to give his defense. "Your Honors, my client is a dedicated security officer who made some mistakes in judgment. Officer Morrison has served this colony for 5 years without major incident. The prosecution is trying to destroy a good man's career over a simple misunderstanding." Many people in the courtroom made angry sounds when they heard this. Judge Carter called for order. The first witness was Katie Williams. She wore a simple blue dress and had her hair pulled back neatly. Katie looked nervous as she walked to the witness stand, but her voice was strong and clear when she spoke. "Please tell the court what happened on the morning of March 15th, Zara requested. Katie took a deep breath. "I was at home studying when Officer Morrison came to our apartment. He said he was doing a security inspection. My parents were at work, so I was alone." "What did Officer Morrison do during this inspection?" "He searched our cabinets for a few minutes. Then he told me to turn around and put my hands on the wall. He said I might be hiding contraband under my clothes." Katie's voice started to shake, but she continued. "He lifted up my skirt in front of our open door. Other people could see what was happening. I told him to stop, but he wouldn't listen. I was so scared and embarrassed." "What happened next?" "Commander Jackson arrived and made him stop. She saved me." Blake's lawyer tried to make Katie look like a liar during his questioning. "Isn't it true that you were acting suspicious that morning? Weren't you trying to hide something from the security officer?" Katie looked confused. "Hide what? I was just studying at home." "You don't have any illegal technology devices? No stolen property?" "No, sir, I don't have anything like that." The lawyer couldn't shake Katie's story because it was the truth. Next, Maria Santos testified about her own experience with Blake Morrison. She spoke in accented English, but her words were powerful. "He came to my home 6 months ago. He said, 'I was gambling illegally, but I don't gamble.' He made me take off my shirt while he searched for money that wasn't there. I was so ashamed I couldn't leave my apartment for a week." "Did you report this incident?" "I tried to, but Captain Fletcher said I was lying. He said I could go to jail for making false accusations. I got scared and stopped trying." Kevin Chang testified next. Then Lisa Park presented the evidence they had gathered: security camera footage, financial records, and photographs of the illegal weapons. Each piece of evidence made Blake's guilt more obvious. The most dramatic moment came when Danny Wright testified about the weapons smuggling. He showed the court pictures of the alien guns Blake had been hiding. "These weapons are made by the Krex Syndicate," Danny explained. "The Krex are enemies of both humanity and the galactic hegemony. Anyone caught trading with them is guilty of treason." When it was time for Blake to testify, he refused to answer most questions. He sat silently while his lawyer tried to explain away the evidence. But there was too much proof and too many witnesses. During her closing statement, Zara spoke directly to Ambassador Vexhai. "Distinguished observer, you came here to see if humanity deserves a place in the galactic community. I hope this trial shows you our true character. Yes, we have individuals like Blake Morrison who choose hatred and corruption, but we also have people like Katie Williams who find courage to speak truth. We have communities that come together to protect the innocent, and we have a justice system that holds the powerful accountable for their crimes." She turned to face the entire courtroom. "Blake Morrison does not represent humanity. The people who stood up to him do. The colonists who protected Katie Williams do. The officers who chose justice over loyalty do. We are not perfect, but we try to do what is right." The judges deliberated for 2 hours. When they returned, Judge Carter read the verdict. "In the case of the colony versus Blake Morrison, we find the defendant guilty on all charges. The evidence clearly shows a pattern of abuse, corruption, and treason that cannot be tolerated in a civilized society." The courtroom erupted in cheers. Katie Williams hugged her parents. Maria Santos cried with relief. Even some of the other security officers applauded. Blake Morrison was sentenced to 25 years in prison. Captain Fletcher received 15 years for his role in the corruption. Both men would serve their time in the colony's maximum security facility. After the trial, Ambassador Vexhai approached Zara Jackson. The alien's voice was musical and strange, but its words were clear. "Commander Jackson, the hegemony has observed your proceedings with great interest. Your species shows promise. The way you handled this situation demonstrates that humanity may indeed be ready for greater responsibilities." Zara felt a moment of hope. "Thank you, Ambassador. We are still learning, but we are committed to justice and equality. That commitment will be tested many times in the years ahead. But today you have shown that humanity can choose what is right over what is easy." As the courtroom emptied, Zara looked around at the faces of her fellow colonists. They looked different now, more confident, more united, more hopeful about their future among the stars. Justice had been served, and humanity had passed its first test. 6 months after the trial, New Terra Colony looked like a completely different place. The streets were cleaner and safer. People walked with confidence instead of fear. Children played in the parks without worry. The corrupt security officers had been replaced with honest men and women who truly wanted to protect the community. Zara Jackson stood on the observation deck of the colony's administration building, looking out at the busy streets below. Through the large windows, she could see families going about their daily lives. Market vendors sold fresh food from colorful stalls. Students walked to classes at the new academy. Workers headed to their jobs in the mines and factories, but the biggest change was invisible. The fear that had poisoned the colony for years was finally gone. People trusted their protectors again. They reported crimes without worry. They spoke up when they saw injustice. The community had found its voice. A soft chime announced someone entering the observation deck. Zara turned to see Ambassador Vexhai approaching. The alien moved with graceful steps, its silver skin reflecting the afternoon sunlight from New Terra's star. "Commander Jackson," the ambassador said in its musical voice. "I have news from the Galactic Council." Zara felt her heart beat faster. For months, the hegemony observers had been watching New Terra Colony. They studied how humans handled everything from small disputes to major crimes. The future of humanity's relationship with the galaxy depended on their final report. "The Council has completed its evaluation of your species," Vexhai continued. "We have observed humans in times of peace and conflict. We have seen your capacity for both cruelty and compassion. and we have watched how you choose between them." The ambassador moved to stand beside Zara at the window. Together, they looked down at the thriving colony. "The Blake Morrison incident was a test that your species did not know you were taking. How you responded to corruption and injustice told us everything we needed to know about human character." Zara waited, not daring to speak. "The Galactic Council has voted unanimously to invite humanity to join the hegemony as a junior member. You have proven that your species can grow beyond hatred and violence. You have shown that justice matters more to you than protecting those in power." Zara felt a wave of relief and joy wash over her. Humanity would not be alone in the galaxy. They would have allies, teachers, and protection from hostile forces like the Krek Syndicate. "There is more," Vexhai said. "The Council has asked me to offer you a position as humanity's first interstellar ambassador. You would represent your species in dealings with dozens of different alien civilizations." Zara was stunned. She had never imagined such an opportunity. "Ambassador, I am honored, but I am just a colony defense commander. I don't know anything about diplomacy or alien cultures." "You know the most important thing," Vexhai replied. "You know how to stand up for what is right, even when it is difficult. That is the foundation of all good diplomacy." 3 days later, the entire colony gathered in the main square for a celebration. Colorful banners hung from every building. Tables loaded with food filled the streets. A stage had been built in the center of the square where speakers would address the crowd. Katie Williams sat in the front row with her parents. She wore the blue uniform of a first-year academy cadet. After the trial, Katie had decided to follow Zara's example and trained to become a defender of justice. Her grades were excellent, and her instructors said she had natural leadership abilities. Next to the Williams family sat Maria Santos and her 2 children. Maria had been promoted to supervisor at the food processing center. She no longer lived, in fear of corrupt officials. Kevin Chang was there too, along with dozens of other colonists who had found new courage after Blake Morrison's conviction. The new security chief, Officer Lisa Park, introduced the speakers. Lisa had been chosen to replace Captain Fletcher because of her honesty and dedication to real police work. Under her leadership, the security department had become a force for protection instead of oppression. "Today we celebrate more than just joining the galactic hegemony," Lisa announced to the crowd. "We celebrate becoming the kind of people who deserve to be part of something greater." Zara took the stage wearing her new diplomatic uniform. The fabric was woven with threads that changed color in the light, a gift from the hegemony tailors. On her collar were the symbols of both humanity and the Galactic Alliance. "6 months ago, our colony faced a choice," she began. "We could protect a corrupt system that benefited a few, or we could demand justice that protected everyone. We chose justice, and that choice has opened the stars to us." The crowd cheered and applauded. Zara waited for quiet before continuing. "But joining the hegemony is not the end of our journey. It is the beginning. We will meet new species with different cultures and beliefs. We will face challenges we cannot imagine, and we will be tested again and again." She looked directly at Katie Williams. "The next generation will carry humanity to heights we can only dream of. They will explore new worlds, make new friends, and solve problems we haven't even discovered yet. But they will succeed because they learned the most important lesson of all. True strength comes from protecting others, not from having power over them." Ambassador Vexhai joined Zara on the stage. The alien held a crystal device that glowed with soft blue light. This was the formal invitation to join the hegemony, encoded in technology beyond human understanding. "People of New Terra Colony," Vexhai said, "you represent the best of your species. You have shown that humans can overcome their worst impulses and choose to do what is right. The galaxy welcomes you with hope and respect." The celebration continued, late into the night. People danced in the streets and children ran between the tables playing games. For the first time in years, New Terra Colony felt like a true community. As the evening wound down, Zara found herself walking through the residential district. She passed apartment 47C, where Katie Williams lived with her family. The apartment looked the same as before, but everything had changed. No one would ever again be afraid to answer their door when security officers came calling. Zara continued walking until she reached the small memorial that had been built near the colony's entrance. It was dedicated to all the victims of corruption and abuse throughout human history. A simple message was carved into the stone. Their suffering was not in vain if we learn from it. Tomorrow, Zara would leave New Terra Colony to begin her work as humanity's first galactic ambassador. She would travel to the Hegemony capital, a massive space station where thousands of different species worked together in peace. She would learn new languages, study alien cultures, and represent humanity in the great galactic community. But tonight, she was content to walk through the safe streets of her home colony. The fear was gone. Justice had triumphed, and humanity had proven itself worthy of the stars. In the distance, ships from a dozen different worlds approached New Terra Colony. They brought trade goods, technology, and knowledge that would transform human civilization. They also brought new friends who would stand with humanity against the darkness of space. The age of isolation was over. The age of cooperation had begun. And it all started with one woman who refused to let injustice go unpunished. As Zara looked up at the alien stars above New Terra, she smiled. The future was bright with possibility, and humanity was ready to embrace it.